Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video journal. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I just got back from Antarctica. A place I have dreamed of visiting for as long as I can remember. The most isolated place in the world. Yet a place more abundant with wildlife than I've seen anywhere else. As a huge animal lover, it was such a special kind of paradise that I was so honored to get to witness for a while. I'm still finding myself not able to fully comprehend all that I've seen here, the vastness and wildness of it all. Mountains and ice that seem to just go on forever, here in one of the last touched places on Earth. Witnessing the life down here was eye-opening. Seeing so many different species of whales and birds, and watching how they interact with the land, ice, water, and as well as with each other, you can just see their personalities and resilience. With an expedition ship as our home base for 12 days, we explored both by water and land. And stepping into the penguins' way of life, I realized no pictures or videos I've seen before, no articles or stories I've read, can do justice to being here in person and seeing this place with one's own eyes. And yet, in this last, nearly untouched continent, the question still often begs, should we even be here at all? But let's rewind a few days before I get ahead of myself. Our adventure begins in Ushuaia, the port from which we'd be embarking on our expedition ship in a couple of days. After traveling over 48 hours from Canada to reach here, my partner and I spent the evening on our Airbnb balcony, taking in the city view with equal parts excitement and exhaustion before we caught up on some much-needed sleep. Good morning, everyone, from Ushuaia at the very southern tip of Argentina. The first thing you should know about today is that it is the love of my life, Christopher Andrus's birthday, so we're gonna go pester him with our morning coffees and have a little conversation. Let's go. Cheers, baby.
Cheers,
Happy
baby.
birthday.
Thank you, baby.
To another year of adventures.
Another year.
It's really starting to snow now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It'll be good for the
We're in a
pop-up.
snow globe. Ah!
Hair and coffee. This side of the camera, I prefer the other side.
Yeah, it takes a little getting used to. I don't know if I've ever properly directly introduced you to my YouTube audience. So YouTube, this is Chris, my
Hello.
partner. Chris, this is maybe the one person who's watching, maybe 10, maybe 1,000, who knows. No biggie, no
biggie.
pressure. Chris has been to Antarctica once before already. How many years ago?
2018.
2018.
2024 now, so it's like 7.
We were trying to do the math yesterday and we
years?
could not figure it out. That's just how bad at math we are.
And now you're joining me. It's almost a full circle.
Yes, Chris is a guide for photographers through his company, Offbeat Photography. He's partners with a couple of our other photographer friends and they travel around the world and teach photo workshops. So this time I am joining them in Antarctica. But when you first came here 7 years ago, that was kind of before, or I guess just starting in your photography days. You were in a very different life then. And from what you've told me is that at that time when you came to Antarctica, you were going through some darker times in your life, and I guess it was kind of a last resort thing to come here and see if you could find a different meaning to life. What did that trip mean to you and how did it change how you see things?
That trip was absolutely one of the most pivotal moments in the moment of my life, I think. Yeah, I was going through some darker times. It was a different stage of my life on where I was trying to find out who I was and where I was going and all that stuff, and corporate world. And I came here just for an adventure of trying to find out who I was, pretty much, and where I wanted to go from there. And somehow on the boat one evening, it just all kind of made sense. It's the first time I think I've truly heard the earth breathe. I think I told you that before, where sitting there listening to the ice crackle, the boat silent, it truly was just where all of a sudden everything kind of lined up, and I knew the path I wasn't on wasn't the right path, and I wanted to make changes. And yeah, hearing the earth breathe that night really just centered my universe, and I knew where I wanted to be, and I set some goals from that point. From that moment forward, I think I appreciated life a lot more.
Yeah, you've told me you've lived through many lives, and that was 3 years before we met. We met 4 years ago. That set you on the course to eventually for our paths to cross.
Yep.
And now here we are. Now it's a bit of a full circle moment for you.
Yeah, it's really, really weird to be where I felt really lost, trying to find a path, to now I'm found and seen, and chasing my goals and living the best life. Like, I didn't want to work corporate world anymore. I wanted to do all these different things after that moment. To be back here now doing what I love and with who I love, I'm pretty
dang
special.
glad that I get to be part of this life of yours.
And no mullet.
I lucked out big time. Are we gonna see penguins?
Are we gonna see penguins? I can assure you of this. You're gonna smell the penguins before you see them.
Do they smell bad?
They don't smell good. Imagine 100,000 penguins standing on their own feces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm really excited to see them. We're actually going to one part of Antarctica that I have not seen yet.
Ooh.
We're going to the Weddell Sea, the east side of Antarctica.
The Weddell Sea.
Yeah.
A new experience for you.
That is, it's one of my dreams to see it. So.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm gonna waddle around all bundled up in my jacket with the penguins.
Waddle, eh?
Yeah. Practice my penguin waddle. One last question.
One last question.
If you could give any advice to somebody who might also be going through some darker times of life, like you were 7 years ago, what kind of advice would you give to that person?
Ooh, good question. The days get better. I can promise you. I know everybody hears that cheesy line that the dark days bring brighter days, but they truly do. I think if all the days were bright, you wouldn't appreciate them. Having those dark days, you need them, but surround yourself with the people that support you and lift you up, and do the same for them. If you're not in that community, keep looking. I think that's the biggest advice. Keep looking. They're out there. They're out there somewhere. They're waiting to be found by you. And that was one of the biggest things for me. Is about a year after that trip, I had a new outlook on life, and the darkness was still there, but the community I had stumbled into, it was the right community, and that community opened up door after door and supported, and we lifted each other up. And I think that's the biggest advice. If you are in those dark times, reach out. Friends, family, find that community, or appreciate it. I do appreciate when I do have bad days. I do appreciate when that darkness is dark and all that, because I do know tomorrow it may be a brighter day, and I'll appreciate it a lot more.
And when you were on that trip and you went alone to Antarctica, you told me that you spent a lot of time looking at the stars and finding yourself there. And I know for myself, when I'm going through harder times, if I can find myself out in nature where things are quiet, where, like you said, where you can hear the earth breathe, it starts to change your perspective. And
that's the biggest thing. Like, when I'm grumpy, what do? You take me for a walk. I'm like a dog.
Yeah.
As soon as you take me for a walk in the mountains, I start losing that grumpiness or stuff.
Yeah.
Surrounding by nature, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we don't do. Touching nature is one of the big things, like taking the shoes off. touching the ice, introducing yourself to the mountain, introducing yourself to the glacier, making physical contact with your surroundings, I think is a huge thing that will help with darkness. It'll help you ground yourself.
And although Antarctica is a big feat, not just anybody can go there, even though it changed your life, but for most people, and for myself included, just getting out to your local forest or somewhere where you can touch nature and connect with nature and feel yourself calming down there, I think.
Touch a tree.
It's important.
Yeah. That tree can be in the city, it can be anywhere. Just touch a tree and just try to connect and see what happens.
Nature is a powerful thing. Oh, thanks for sharing with us, babe.
Absolutely.
It's time to get ready to go to Antarctica. With our final day before boarding the ship, we spent our time exploring the surroundings, getting lost among the bustling mountain town and all of its history, art, and food. I very quickly discovered my favorite spot, a vegan food place with the best empanadas I've ever had. I may have returned here several times throughout the day. We also went for some little hikes in the surrounding forests, both to wear off some empanadas and because, well, this was our last chance to see any greenery for a little while. And then we also indulged in chocolate cake. There was a birthday involved, so we had to. The next morning, we rolled up to our ship where I had the completely unplanned surprise of being greeted by Liz, a friend I hadn't seen in 10 years.
Liz! I can't believe it! We're off to find our cabin now.
Ooh, around the corner we go. Let's check it out. What have we got? We have a little table. And our two tiny little beds. Teeny little cabin just for us.
Bunk beds, baby.
Ooh. We all got these new puffies from Intrepid. Ours for adventures and ours to keep, apparently. Excited to try this on. After settling in, having a drink, and walking through the ship safety procedures, we were finally off, pulling out from the port and making our way down the Beagle Channel before we'd soon hit the open ocean. We were guided by the black-browed albatross, these massive birds with up to 8-foot wingspans. They accompanied our entire journey, gliding alongside us on the wind currents surrounding the ship. We'd be spending the next 2 days crossing the Drake Passage, taking it easy and listening to talks and presentations from our expedition guides, including Chris as he taught about the art of photography. And soon we were crossing the Antarctic Convergence, the boundary between the cold Antarctic waters and the warmer surrounding oceans. Here we were greeted by cold, dense fog and our first sightings of ice. Good morning, everyone. We are already on day 3 out at sea, and I haven't been filming all that much for the last couple of days just because there's not much to see right now other than open ocean. We're crossing the famous Drake Passage, which takes about 2 days, 2.5 days to get across to reach Antarctica. And we are having a Drake Lake situation, which is amazing. As you can see, the water is very calm and maybe only up to 3-meter swells, so just some gentle rocking, as opposed to the Drake Shake, which is when, more often than not, it's very choppy and waves up to 7, 8, 9, 10 meters, and then of course with those 10-meter dips as well, so it's more like 20-meter crazy wave action. And as much as some people might like that, like my partner Chris, for example, who's obsessed with all things crazy, I am very glad that we have a smooth sailing. I have never been on a ship for more than an hour or 2 tops, so I never knew if I would be seasick or not, and I was a bit worried about this Drake Passage crossing, but it has been amazing so far. I haven't felt an ounce of queasiness, so I've very much been enjoying this. The captain is hightailing it down to Antarctica while we have this smooth open window, just because there is a storm that's going to roll in the next day. So hopefully, if anything, we'll just catch the very tail end of it, and then we'll be in more sheltered area next to the land of Antarctica. We did just pass our first iceberg about an hour ago, and that was so cool to see it just appear ghostly out of the fog. And it was huge. It was like a whole city block with all kinds of caves and caverns crumbling off the edge. And now that just got me super excited, because I think from here on out we're going to be seeing more and more ice, and tomorrow morning the real stuff begins. That evening, just as the storm moved in, we arrived at the South Shetland Islands, just above the Antarctic Peninsula, where we were greeted by more massive icebergs and our first sightings of glaciers cascading down the mountains. And also my very first wild penguin sighting, which was just the start of my new love affair with these adorable creatures. With the weather constantly changing, the ship's crew also had to constantly change our landing plans and locations, which meant that each day turned into a spontaneous adventure, which is honestly the way I love it. We ended up visiting Deception Island first, where we could wait out the storm by sheltering inside the island's natural harbor, which was actually inside the crater of an active volcano. We saw some old scientific stations which had been abandoned since the volcano eruptions damaged them back in the 1960s. Spending the day exploring this island by foot, I couldn't help noticing the similarities between the landscapes here and the highlands of Iceland, one of my other favorite places for the raw and wild, rugged volcanic landscapes. Except, of course, Iceland doesn't have penguins. The next morning, we made it to the Antarctic Peninsula itself. Here, our incredible expedition guides took us out to explore the endless expanses of wild ice. This was where it really began to set in for me. The realization that I was really and truly in Antarctica now. And it was easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer beauty of it all. Like I was floating in a dream of ice, light, and isolation. There was a sense of calm here, a sensation of serenity that had me questioning if I was actually in heaven itself. I don't know if I've ever seen a place more pristine as here. Later that day, we visited our first penguin colony. As soon as I stepped onto the land and found myself surrounded by thousands of mischievous Gentoo penguins, I was in love.
Get on now, guy. Oh my gosh.
It was nesting season, which seems to be quite a busy season. The nesting pairs take turns incubating the eggs, switching it up daily while their mates hunt for food or for precious pebbles, which they gift to each other or use to build up their nests. The penguins have carved their very own penguin highways through the snow, and we often had to stop and wait for the penguin crossings when their highways intersected with our own paths. I couldn't help thinking of them as little humans, certainly just as clumsy as us waddling about in the snow.
Here.
but also their commitment and dedication I found inspiring. Their devotion to their eggs, to their mates, to their colonies, how they work together to raise their young, it was beautiful to watch. But like many humans, there's still plenty of family squabbles, fights over cool rocks, friends teasing each other and horsing around. And mostly I couldn't stop giggling watching them. It's so easy and apparent to see their personalities shining through. I found myself wishing I could just stay and be part of their family for a while, hang out with them longer and study them more. I knew I would love them, but I really grew to admire them more than I expected. And that admiration and mild obsession still sticks with me now. I'm not quite sure where it happened along the journey, but soon the days seemed to start blending together, and it became my new normal, this life among the ice. We visited so many penguin colonies, and every time I couldn't contain my joy watching them embarking on their grand adventures, slipping and tripping their way across the epic landscapes. Although, for how clumsy they were on land,
Little guy.
seeing them underwater was a whole different story. As we kept exploring far and wide up and down the Antarctic Peninsula, to some eyes, the landscapes might have appeared to begin to start looking all the same in this world of seemingly endless ice and water. But for me, I really tried to focus on noticing the diversity and changes between each place that we visited. And not just each new place, but I began to realize how drastically changed the very same places could be just a day apart. The ice was constantly shifting and changing, breaking and shrinking. I learned that Antarctica is losing its ice mass at an average of 150 billion tons per year, and the impacts are becoming more and more apparent. However, I was delighted to learn from some of the scientists on board our ship, who were literally there to count every pair of penguins in every colony we visited. We learned that several Gentoo penguin colonies are growing in size compared to previous years. But sadly, that's not the case for most of the other wildlife here. The other penguin species, such as the Adelie penguins, have declined by nearly half, and the chinstrap penguins have declined by almost 80% in the last few decades with the warming climate. And not just that, but since last year, the avian influenza has begun sweeping through Antarctica, affecting both penguin colonies and now beginning to affect the sea mammals as well. To top it off, we also saw several massive industrial krill fishing ships here in the Antarctic waters, which are not only taking the main source of food for the penguins and whales, but have also been a known cause for the deaths and injuries of whales and wildlife, trapping them during their krill fishing process. With all these things together, it's no wonder we've been seeing such a decline in the wellness of wildlife in Antarctica. Learning all of this was eye-opening, and though I was grateful to be there in person, to learn and see all this for myself, I also couldn't help but wonder if there should be any form of human footprint down here at all. I don't know what the right answer to this is yet, but it's a question I'll be holding and pondering deeply going forward. Eventually, we did make it all the way to the Weddell Sea, where we were met by the fast ice. Sea ice still attached to land, but stretching for miles and miles into the sea. We couldn't go much further, but we did enjoy our first full day of sunshine here, at what felt like the very edge of the world. From here, we'd be turning around and slowly making our way back towards the Drake Passage, but not before our captain would spend the day expertly navigating through the most spectacular tabular icebergs I've ever seen, like islands of ice, broken off from land and now circling in the currents of the Weddell Sea for years as they gradually break down. The current largest tabular iceberg is 3,500 square kilometers, which is about the same size as Oahu, Hawaii. Needless to say, we were mesmerized by these ice islands. Standing out on deck, watching the movement and flow of the ice for hours, I felt I could understand what Chris meant about this place. How he felt it was the first place he could hear the earth breathe. There's a sensation of deep aliveness here among the stillness. And as I take it all in, I find my mind slowing down, my lungs breathing in time with the earth itself. And in that, there's a feeling of deeper connection. There's a special kind of peace found in this, and I could really feel it settling over me. In these final days of our journey, this was the feeling I wanted to remember most, to carry with me wherever we go next.
When you don't hear the river song, when you can't find your way back home, when you don't feel like carrying on, when the mountains crumble down, voices of darkness rumbles on, crashing the heart that once was strong. Carry on and on. Carry on and stages of fire crossing on through the north dark